slides and begin starting the session?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne. Can you begin, Marianne?
Yes, Sundasa, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Welcome, everyone, from every corner of the KIX Africa 90 Hub. We are glad to have you again for this fourth round computer practice session, which KIX Africa 19 Hub has organized in collaboration with you and the consultants. By introduction, I'm Hundessa, working for UNESCO ICPA based in Addis, Ethiopia. We have here our KIX Africa 19 team and the facilitators whom you are familiar with. And you yourselves, I kindly request everyone to introduce your service through using the chat box with the interest of time when they would move on to the today's agenda. Just before taking you to the today's agenda, I would like to highlight that previously we have discussed or dealt with 3 sessions, which started on the 2nd of June, where we focused on mapping core competencies for students and developing competency-based curriculum. And on June 9, we have practiced implementing competency-based curriculum in secondary schools. We have heard this experience from Kenya, and for the mapping core competencies, we have heard experience from Ghana. And on 16th of June, we have discussed the role of experiential learning in secondary schools, where we heard the experiences from the Zambia. And today, which is going to be focusing on integrating ICT in competency-based curriculum, we will be hearing an experience from Rwanda, and this tires will be the first season of the community of practice, and we will break for till the 13th of June, and will be again meet on the 7th of July 2022. For today's agenda, will, as usual, will last for 2 hours long. We have already started the introduction, and for 5 minutes we'll be having introduction on cessations learning outcomes, which is going to be introduced to us by Dr. Cosmos, and for sharing a lesson plan and implementation of CBC in schools, Mr. Calvin will take us through that, and we'll be having a speaker following that by Mr. Calvin too. And we'll also be having an activity on integration of ICT and CBCs, which is going to be facilitated by Dr. Cosmos and Dr. Fika. And then we'll be having Rwanda's experience on integrating ICT in a competency-based curriculum, which is going to be the central agenda of this particular community of practice, and which will be focusing for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be having a presentation leading to linking a lesson plan and the ICT integration. That is going to be facilitated by Dr. Cosmos and Dr. Fika. And then we'll have a guided group discussion on integration of ICT in a competency-based curriculum. That is going to be facilitated by Dr. Cosmos. And then we'll have feedback from the groups, which is going to be a Q&A session, for which going to be covered by 15 minutes. And finally, we'll be having a survey, which is going to gauge us what takeaways we have taken from the community of practice, and what suggestions you have to the KIX Africa 19 Hub, and to the facilitators, and to the overall sessions, including the previous session, so that we'll be able to have a say from your end, and accordingly design our remaining community of practice based on your suggestions you will be providing to us. These are just a brief introduction to the agenda, today's agenda, and the whole sessions. So by now I can officially invite Mr. Cosmos to begin the session. Thank you so much.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, but we can't
Hello?
see you.
But you can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, you are hearing me now?
Yes, we hear, but we can't see you.
Okay. Yes. Now I think you see me also.
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You are welcome for today's session, and we thank you all for the introductions that has been made. And today our session, as has been introduced, is on integrating ICT in competence-based curriculum. And what are we expected for today? It is that we expect to at least to revisit understanding of lesson plan in implementation of CBC. And why are we focusing on that? We are focusing on this because, of course, last time we had a discussion but did not go very far. But we said, of course, we can start with it so that we can see how are we going to integrate ICT in the competence-based curriculum. And also we demonstrate understanding of integration of ICT in a lesson plan for integration of ICT in a lesson plan for implementation of CBC. And also we have to remind ourselves for the long-term activity, and the long-term activity is focusing on session 4, and has these 4 questions. What are the factors influencing integration of ICT in competence-based curriculum? How do you integrate ICT in the competence-based curriculum? How do you ensure integration of ICT in the competence-based curriculum? And also to prepare a simple plan to orient colleagues on the integration of ICT in competence-based curriculum. Actually, here we expect you to include the specific stakeholders who will need to be engaged in order to make sure that you get information or support you will need in order to implement the competence-based curriculum. Hello, Fika. Hello? Hello? I expected Fika to continue with this, then I can continue myself. Let me share with you my screen again, because we want to start with the lesson planning. Maybe try to get views from the participant. How should a lesson plan look like from what we shared? Maybe you can put in the chat box, and our friend can introduce a small music while we say, while we are trying to reflect on how should a lesson plan be when implementing a competence-based curriculum. You are warmly welcome.
Sorry, Cosmos, we're not able to play any music. If you are sharing your screen, you have to be the one to play the music as well, since the same person shares both their screen and their music.
Okay, let me remove my screen, because I do not have the music. I like your music there. I stop
But
sharing.
Cosmos, can I ask you, what do you expect people to do right now? It's not very clear to me. What would you like people to do right now with these questions?
Actually, their views on how should a lesson plan look like as we implement a CBC, because we have already shared that information, and we feel that maybe there might be some views. at least how should this lesson plan be? They can tell us some views. That is only that way.
Okay, and how long do they have to think about this question before they begin talking about it?
Yes?
How long do they have to think about this question that you posted before they begin raising their hands and talking about it?
Just three minutes are enough.
Okay.
They can write there and then we can just share experiences. Hello, okay. Thank you for what has been shared. A lot. Hello. Okay, maybe I can call Nelly Machu to share with us because you have written many things. What do you say about a lesson plan in the when we are implementing the so-called competence-based curriculum? Nelly Machu. Hello, Nelly. Hello. Nelly, can you share something? Okay. Now we find almost many agree that when we are implementing a competence-based curriculum, we need a number of things. We see that there are some who say we need the technology to be connected. There are those who say we need a lesson plan should be a concise, straight, and focused to the main goal. There are also some that are telling us that a lesson plan should show the concept to be covered, objectives, competency to be developed, method to be used to develop those competencies, resources, and media, as well as time. All of these are important items that we need to follow. Now, while we continue, I welcome Fika to continue to present on how to share the views on lesson plan as we did last time, so that at least we can have something to continue pondering in and maybe trying to understand what are the important elements that we feel should be included when we are preparing a lesson plan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cosmas, and thank you so much, participants, for sharing your experience on how to prepare a lesson plan. Maybe before I start presenting my my slide here, let us think a little bit. What are the challenges? Maybe some of them, you are a teacher, you have been teaching in schools, whether secondary schools or primary schools. But let us think, what are the challenging teachers face in using a lesson plan? Just 1 minute, let us think about it, and then we can share. Just 1 minute, please. Okay, who is ready to share with us? Hello, do you hear me?
Could you please repeat the question, Fika?
Yes, my question is, according to what participants have presented in each chat box, we know that the lesson plan is very important to develop student competencies. But let us think, what are the challenges do teachers face in using or in preparing a lesson plan for their respective subjects?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone to share? Bonnie, can you share with us? Oh, Betty.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, you're welcome.
I am Mal Pepero from Lesotho. My experience with the lesson plan is that sometimes its implementation is not happening as it is planned. Some of the things are not very practical to plan, to do during teaching. That is the experience that I have encountered. Thank you.
And what do you think, what are the reasons behind it?
Maybe teachers have expectations which are not practical during teaching. They have their own expectations. So when they are teaching, they find that those are not happening as planned.
Okay, thank you so much. Akelo, I can see you raise up your hand, please. Welcome to share.
Okay, thank you. I would like to say that one of the challenges teachers face in preparation of lesson plans is time, because there are so many competing factors in school. They have to attend to the students. They are attending to other things in the school, lessons. They have so many lessons to attend to. So the time of preparing lesson plans at time could be a challenge. Thank you.
Most of them, you found that the lesson plan should have activities for the student to perform, but even the teacher himself or herself to perform. And last week we shared with you various frameworks which we can use to prepare a lesson plan. But sometimes also we will need to think what kind of framework would be suitable for our teachers, because sometimes teachers, they can find that they are having too much paperwork to work on before going to teach. And at the same time, we can find our teachers are having more than one classroom. They can have a classroom A at the same time B and C. So after sharing with you the 5 framework, so today I wanted to go back to that lesson plan which we shared with you, and let us find out at the end we can reflect on it. If it is a simple lesson plan or the country itself, they can have their own lesson plan. For example, the one which we can share, the lesson plan here, it's the one which starts with the introduction, the one which can start, it can start with introduction, and then it goes with development of the competences, and also it goes to design, and later on to realization. So let us go back to see what should introduction entails. Teachers have different ways to introduce their lesson. For example, some, they can start with a song or any kind of play, but in this lesson plan which we designed to share in this session, we can say that the teachers can start with this 6 words and HE or KWL plus L. For interest of time, let us use this KWL plus L. And then the teacher will allow the student to share their ideas in the plenary session so that they can form a common understanding. So after this introduction, for example, as we say, let us go to this KWL. For example, we need to, let us consider our topic, which is about environmental pollution. So the students will be able to ask themselves. I hope because of interest of time, we have presented this last time. So we wanted to see how this development can be. That's why I wanted to start this introduction part. So we needed to ask the question, for example, on the topic about the environmental pollution, the student should ask themselves, what do I know about environmental pollution? What do I want to learn about it? And what shall I have learned about it? And how do I live what I have learned? So they can have all these questions which can help them to think critically and at the same time to think in advance about proper solutions which they are going to tackle based on the competence which we are expecting our students to develop. So after gauging their prior understanding, then the teacher will need to develop learners' understanding. For example, when they talk about a certain idea, as you presented in the question this was presented, you need to think in advance about what kind of method should I use to develop a certain competence. For example, in this example, we say maybe we need to use learning together. That will be our methods. And in this learning together, teacher will be able to depend on what kind of materials have been prepared. For example, can you have a short video extracted from books and other literature. So the student can read and share what they have learned, and each group to write their findings and views. So we have so many ways. This can be an example, but the teachers can have another ways of presenting or how to develop competence based on what we have prepared. So in designing creativity, as you pointed out, we need to design a creativity that can make our student think in advance and come up to conclusion. So it's a time for teachers to allow the group to present their ideas and their fellow students to ask questions and to think if the plan can be applicable. So here, what we can say, we are trying to empower our students to have full autonomy on their own learning. So when we wanted to think in advance, this is where the teacher can have a formative assessment to see how the discussion went on. The teacher can be able to link the discussed plan in the groups and the learner to observe commonalities, differences, and surprises. And they can also come up with even more solution on it. And the learner can determine the feasibility of proposed plans. So we go to conclude the lesson. So in closure of this lesson, teacher also can have so many ways. You can have a song or stories or question and answer so that to clarify all issues image in their presentations. And also we can allow our students to have their own reflection. This can depend what kind of rubrics the teachers have prepared. Please, I can welcome you to think at least what important points have you picked from this example of lesson plan. Just 1 minute, please. Thank you. 1 minute, then I'll call any person who can raise up his or her hand so that to share what is the major ideas you have learned in this lesson plan. You can think in terms of how to introduce the lesson, how to develop the lesson based on this framework which I presented here. I know we have different kind of frameworks. Yeah.
Thank you, Fika, for what you have done, and thank you also the participant. Yeah, it is important that we try to reflect on lesson plans, on how should the teachers do, and how we can develop competencies, and that is one of the most important area we are trying to focus on, with the view that when we have a proper lesson planning, we might be able to develop good things that are important to our learners, especially the needed competencies. And now let me share my screen while we have a small activity to do before we continue. Anyone with the comment from Fika's presentation, you can raise up your hand. Yes, Olive? You are
Yes, good morning. I think we in Kenya, we have almost close to what he has presented in terms of a lesson. And for us, of course, we have the learning outcomes. Of course, we have the administrative details, then we have learning outcomes, then we have the introduction. And in the introduction, we try to tell the teachers to make sure that they capture every learner by using methodologies that are interesting, that can capture the attention of every child. Then in the development, that's where now we include learning experiences, and these learning experiences must have the activities they will do so that they arrive at the learning outcomes that we have designed. So we want to see step by step what the teacher is developing, and that the learners are more involved, not the teacher telling them stories, but learners are doing things and learning from their own, manipulating their own data, and then giving feedback. For us, conclusion is like summarizing that lesson, that you go through it using different methods so that it's not monotonous, and find out if the learners have captured what it is that you wanted them to capture. Then the reflection for us is for the teacher to reflect. I taught this class. What were the things that I did well, and which ones did I not do right? And maybe what do I plan to do in the next lessons? So that's how we do it in Kenya.
Yeah, thank you so much for your experience. And that has been also experienced in Tanzania when we are using the content-based approach, where we are trying to measure all the students have understood. But we are trying to think now, when we come to introduce competence-based, should we continue in the same way? We try to see that in the competence-based, learners are the center for the learning process. Now, if they are the center for the learning process, and it is important to know their impression on their work. It is important to know what are the things that are coming up. And especially when we are coming to integrate ICT, you can find that the approach that we used previously was more in the content-based. And that's why it was more teacher-centered. You can find the teacher is the one to reflect. But this time in the competence, we have to try to see who is developing the competence. Is it the teacher or the learners? Maybe Fika, if you have something to add.
Thank you, Cosmas.
Maybe I may comment on that.
And thank you for your contribution. You're welcome.
Yes. For us, it's making sure in the learning experiences, the learners are the ones doing. The teacher is more, in fact, these days in Kenya, we are calling teachers facilitators. Yours is to organize the activities, let the students do, let them do their own learning, let them make their own conclusions. Yours is to guide them to be able to achieve what learning outcomes that you have. So it's not a matter of going to class and teaching. It's a matter of organizing learning experiences so that the learners do and they learn in their own way. And then you guide them so that because you already have planned some learning outcomes and you want to achieve them, then you as a teacher must then know whether you achieved your learning outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we are in the same line of thinking, because as I said that the competence, for example, in this work which we want to develop is for the student to determine control of environmental pollution. And at this lesson, we are expecting for them to determine pollutants. How they can determine pollutants? It depends on the activity that the teachers has designed. For example, to give them different articles, or maybe to present a short video for the student to determine this. It's not the teachers who is going to tell them, but just to facilitate them. That's why I said that we needed to give our students autonomy for their own learning. And then from those, the teachers can ask questions. If the student can realize there are some agents of pollutions, but the main idea also for the student to design this plan for excursion to mobilize for control of pollution. So the stages which I presented all are geared to reach to these outcomes. So I don't know if you get this clear, Olive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear.
It sounds clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. It is very nice that we are having these discussions when we are talking about the lesson plan. And what is important in the competence-based, as we said initially, we are trying to see which type of framework that we can adopt. For us, we said, okay, we have these 4 frameworks in a lesson plan, and whatever we are doing, we say the RCA, that we have to reflect, connect, and apply. We have the EGA, where we have experience, reflect, generalize, apply. The 5 is engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. And the IDDR that we used in this lesson, the example of this lesson. While this discussion on the lesson plan is going on, let me try to give a small thing that we can ponder around, so that we see. Maybe is a small icebreaker. How do you feel today? You can just write one word. How do you feel today? You can just write one word in the chat box there, while I am sharing my screen to continue with the other things that we go on. Yes, how do you feel today in one word? Yes, I feel someone is telling, yes, now something is coming up. Yes. Now, while we go on, I stop sharing my screen. Now, Christine, can you share your screen so that we continue from you before we go on with the other things? You are welcome, Christine Akelo, to give us the experience. And now it's not only in Rwanda, but it is a long experience from people who have worked long to so many years working on integrating ICT in teaching and learning. Now let us hear from Christine as we go on. Christine, welcome. I stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Cosmas, and thank you, Cosmas. I don't know how long you want me to take this, to go through this session. I'm not going to present my screen yet.
Yes.
But I just want to talk about my experience as an ICT integration in education teacher educator. And I work for an organization called Global eSchools and Community Initiative. And as I mentioned, I'm a teacher educator in ICT integration. I'm glad that this is happening now, because for a long time we have been struggling with how do we impact ICTs in our learning. And now CBC is here, and all of a sudden we appreciate technology because technology works well with CBC in the classroom. So what you have just shared on lesson plans was an eye-opener, because how do you integrate technology in a CBC classroom? So when you ask yourself that question, it's so loaded. First, you ask yourself, so where is ICT going to come in? At what point? Because from the presentations we have there, there's the introduction, development, design, realization, and closure, which Mbudhia from Kenya, just like me, was talking about us having reflections on the part of the teacher, where the teacher is asking themselves, how was the lessons? Where did I go? What worked well for me? What did not work well for me? So looking at these stages, we are asking ourselves, where does the place of ICT come in? And ICT is going to come in at any point of this. We can use technology to do our introduction. I had the facilitator say that you can introduce maybe by singing a song. So you can introduce your lesson by bringing in a clip for learners to watch in relation to the farm outputs or pollution or whatever it is that you're going to teach. Then there's at the development level, again, you may also introduce technology. So when you're talking about ICT integration in CBC, we are talking about using technology seamlessly inside our lesson, so that we do not have now it is time for technology. No, we are using technology to aid in introduction, in development, or even in design. So if you're lucky maybe to have a computer lab, like maybe some organizations support this. So students will be taken into the computer lab to search for information from their gadgets, from their computers, related to what is being taught at that particular time. So using this, we are aiding learners to own their own learning. So my experience in this is, as we were doing technology in integration of technology in the schools, this was in high school, but can also be replicable in primary school. So the teachers the teachers are taught how to use technology. Then whatever knowledge that they have on how to use this technology, how to source for OERs, they are going to use this particular skill in their classroom. So how are they going to do this? As a teacher, I have been trained, yes, you can use your PowerPoint presentation on the screen, which I think has happened for so long, and now we are moving away from that. But that is usually the first step. So the first step is that the teacher must have the skill of how to integrate technology in her lesson. So there's PowerPoint presentation which you can use to introduce your lesson. Then you can go ahead after presenting the introduction using the PowerPoint presentation. Also, you have sourced for resources that you're going to use to teach that particular lesson. So this is in a situation where maybe the teacher has a laptop and there is a projector in the school. That works very, very well. So the technology here is not taking the place of the teacher, because that's usually the fear. Technology is used in aiding teaching and learning. So the teacher projects, learners listen or ask questions in between. And CBC, someone mentioned in the chat that CBC also aids in active participation in the lesson, so that it is not just the teacher talking all this time, but learners are also engaged in learning. We can also use technology at conclusion, where we are talking about formative assessment, summative assessment. So you're pausing and asking learners questions. So as the presentations are going on the screen, just like Cosmas was doing, so you pause and ask learners questions. So in the event that you have a Moodle, for example, then learners can key in their response as the teacher is able to see who is getting it right and who is not getting it right. So learning in the class becomes very, very active. Learners therefore own their learning. So once this has happened, then learners escalate, the teachers escalate this to the learners. So the teacher gives students an assessment or an assignment where in the next lesson, we are going to learn about pollution. So I want group A, B, C, D, go and research. So during this lesson, then learners come and present. When they are doing that, we are also incorporating 21st century skills. So learners are developing their communication skills in this. There's decision making, there's teamwork, collaboration, there's creativity, because they are coming up with infographics, which the teacher has shown them. So there's technology literacy, and then there's knowledge deepening, where now learners are coming to show, or teacher is also doing the same. So teacher becomes a mentor. The teacher is a facilitator. The teacher is not a traditional teacher in this setup. So the teacher trains the students or takes the students through how they can make this interesting. And therefore, when I, as a teacher, go to class, I sit behind and students are taking the show. They are teaching us what they have researched on. So that is knowledge deepening. Then we go to knowledge creation. In knowledge creation now, teachers are able to create their own content. So other than going online, searching for content and showing it to the students, the teacher creates content maybe on Moodle, on different platforms. There's so many different platforms. Others are very simple that teachers can use to create content, share the content with their students, and the teacher is able to assess that. So that is in an ideal situation. Being an African, a teacher in Africa, I have been, and I know the challenges that we have. Teachers are innovative. So a teacher will do the same with their own gadget and share it out with the students so that the students can also have that feel. So then teachers are able, once the teacher is able to do that, the teachers are able to collaborate and work together as teams, asking themselves, how do we engage? How do we explore? How do we navigate responsibly? So again, the teacher now has all this knowledge. The teacher has the technology literacy. The teacher has the awareness, and the teacher can create content. So now the teacher is able to gather resources. The teacher is able to navigate responsibly and also share this with the students. Ask students now, I'm sending you to the lab, or you have your parents' phone, or you have all these. How do you search for content responsibly? So that's the next level. So they navigate responsibly, then they design experiences because they have been taught by their teacher. How can they make learnings out of what they have? Then you now empower them. You are skilled. What is it that you can do with the ICT competency that you have within this CBC? So we are here, we are talking about the technology components that a student can use going out, because as we are talking CBC, we are thinking the future, and that is why technology comes in. So the future belongs to only those who are technologically literate. So we start with them when they are still young, and we are taking advantage of CBC because it has given us a platform, it has given us room to make use of these students and engage them as much as we could. So I'll take it back to you, Cosmas. Unless there are any questions, I will ask. You can ask on the chat box, and I'll respond. So thanks, Cosmas.
Yeah, thank you so much for your nice presentation. And actually, what you presented really tells us that the technology is still highly needed, because what we need for today's world is to have the technology that will facilitate our teaching and learning, as we are all used to technology, and our everyday life is really controlled by technology. And now maybe let me welcome someone with comments from what Christine has presented while I share my screen. You are welcome for comments. I will take at least 2 comments. Anyone to raise up your hand for the comments? Hello? Yes, Mboya, you are welcome.
Thank you, Cosmas, and good afternoon. Sorry, I'm unable to put my camera on, but I do have just one question for Christine. I'm just wondering, how can we integrate ICT in schools, in lessons, especially in the areas that are typically hard to reach? Like I had an opportunity to work in an ESOL area, arid area. And this is a situation where even the teachers, they do not have phones. And if they have, they are not accessible. For us to reach the schools, you had to either go through someone who is traveling to that place to inform them way ahead that you will be coming. So these people do not even have access to phones or to computers or anything like that. And even for them, even something like printing, they can go up to over 100 kilometers to print. So I'm just wondering, in such a scenario, how can we then ensure that these children who are in these hard to reach areas are still benefiting from this aspect of integrating ICT in lessons? Thank you. I hope my question is clear.
Yeah, it's very clear, Yvonne. When I hear such questions, I always ask myself first, when we talk about technology, ICT, information, communication technology, so what is technology? And I would quickly think we have taken it a bit higher, because when we're talking ICTs, we are just talking about computers and laptops and projectors. Radios and televisions are also technology in a way. So it's about the creativity of the teacher to see or find how they can maybe record a session and play it around for students. What we are doing, what we are trying to do is to change the traditional norm. How I was taught in the 19th, I can't remember which one, shouldn't be the same way you're teaching your students today, even if they're in the ASAL areas. These students, they listen to music as they are herding. So why do they drop out of school to go and herd? What are you going to do to bring them from the herding places to bring them into the classroom? If it is because they listen to music, you said maybe they do not have mobile phones, they have these small radios that they walk around with, because it's more interesting than sitting in a class listening to a teacher who is good morning children, and it is all that the same the whole day, and evening and tomorrow is the same. So students need a little bit of a change. TVs can work for that. Radios can also work for that. So it's about the creativity of both the student and maybe the teacher, and how they engage the students using any type of technology that can be found in any environment. Thank you. Have I responded, Yvonne?
Okay.
Yes, Christine, thank you. I just wanted you to bring that out, that it doesn't have to be a laptop, and that's a challenge we had in this as well. Yes, it's very important that people realize. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
It was a nice discussion between you, the two. And maybe now just in your chat box, I have these 2 small questions. What comes in mind when one talks about integration of ICT in teaching and learning. And this just came in mind when I was listening to what we were discussing. And at the same time, you can tell us, how can integration of ICT in teaching and learning support the implementation of competency-based? Because this, actually, that is what we are trying to do today. But what Christine has presented to us is almost the same. And what is coming up is ICT related to computers. Is it when there are no school computers at the school, then it means that there is no ICT. Now, those are some of the issues that let us try to ponder around just 3 minutes. Today is our day, and because it is our day, let us use it effectively. Welcome. And I'm going to put this question also in the chat box. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, those 2 questions, I'm putting them in the chat box. Let us see what can we do with this. And at the same time, I've shared this screen. I think we can start from the chat box.
Cosmos, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Yes, I'm saying Secretariat can help us music while people are pondering on issues what we are raising, that what comes in mind when one talks about integration of ICT in teaching and learning, and how can integration of ICT in teaching and learning support the implementation of competency-based. I stop sharing so that the secretary can give us the music for 3 minutes.
Right, but Cosmos, please share the questions in the chat box because we can't see your screen anymore.
Yes, I've shared them already in the chat box. Thank you for the nice music that has supported the participant to reflect much. Yes. I like the ideas and how we feel ICT can help. We see that a lot of facilitators, a number of facilitators are positive toward ICT, because I expected someone to say, no, there is no need to use ICT. I find none. Everyone is telling us that the ICT involves, makes learners to be more engaged in their learning, makes concepts that might have been difficult to explain become easier to be understood. And that apart from all, it is that they help also visualization, especially if they were teaching a new concept that then we can take from them. And at the same time, to me, I say ICT helps learners to already start creating their own job at the first instance, because they help as a thinking tool. Now let me continue sharing my screen. While I'm sharing my screen, let me welcome at least 2 comments from the participants about what we have discussed. What comes in mind when one talks about ICT integration in teaching and learning? And how can this integration of ICT in teaching and learning support implementation of competence-based curriculum? At least 2 comments from the participant, live comments. You are welcome. Anyone to start? Yes, Mdalamba, you are welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's all about using these modern devices, ICT devices, like the laptops, computers, projectors. It could be TVs, etc. Sometimes even the phone, the iPads, all those. These ones can be used. It all depends on the teacher's access to these materials, because they can be accessed differently. Sometimes even as small as it is, a phone also does the job. In my case, I use projectors a lot. Yeah, like today, even at 3:30, I'll be using the same. So there is a lot of enjoyment on part of students. They like it so much. They enjoy and also have it's like the lesson is coming to becoming real life situations. Currently, I'm teaching environmental issues, and the topic itself, the lesson that I've prepared, the use of the projector will enable them have first-hand information in terms of watch the videos of how pollution is like in other areas. At the same time, I usually involve these students a lot when it comes to setting the gadgets. So you can see that they also learn along, they acquire those skills of ICT. So in short, I can say it's really fascinating. It's good. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for what you have contributed. And now let us hear somebody called Commander Kamiri from Rwanda. Maybe you can tell us something about this when we are talking about competence-based and how integration of ICT, how can each support each other? Commander, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Cosmas. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that ICT is really effective when it is accessible and considering different avenues where learners of different categories would be able to access. I'll give a case of Rwanda where we are doing now one laptop per teacher and ensure that at least before you get, I know the first initiative was around one laptop per child, but now we realize that it's also important before you teach something, you also have to be familiar with it. So the government is embarking on really supporting teachers to be able to have laptops, but also created other avenues where people without access to internet can be able to use the shortcode, like a USSD shortcodes, to access these materials. They have also created e-learning platforms where learners can be able even to access questions to use during when they are in their holidays or when they are practicing with their parents. So I think one takeaway mainly is really to think about not only computers availability. Yes, we have built even smart classrooms, like 40% of Rwandan schools have smart classrooms where they can access really like this digital content and really access to computers. But again, when they get home, what do they do? What other avenues do they have to be able to keep practicing what they learned at school level? So that being said, they kept on really like building more other platforms like e-learning. And as you all know that COVID really expedited processes right now, even those systems that were developed during COVID, like shortcodes where learners can be able to access assessments or questions and access teachers to be able to respond, are still in place. So they have different avenues. Even without school, when they are back home, they can use e-platform, they can use the shortcodes to still be able to access materials. So that is why I say like really ICT is relevant when it is accessible, not only when students are at school. Yeah, that is my point. Thank you, Mr. Cosmas. Back to you.
Thank you, Commander, because I was about to ask you, Rwanda, I was in Rwanda around in the year 2017, and the idea was that one laptop per child. And I was about to ask you, why have you changed to one laptop per teacher? It is very interesting that we are looking at these issues and we find almost everybody is looking in the same case. Now, let me try to continue with something before we break out. Now, one thing when we are talking about these competencies, what are they? I find maybe sometimes when we are looking at ICT integration, it is important to see what are these competencies. To me, I like to see that competencies can be seen as developing skills, knowledge, values, and attitude. And of the most important, attitude. And we see with the ICT, it's likely to develop children attitude. I remember when we had a project with the teachers in Tanzania in remote areas, what we were doing is what others have talked about, is that all teachers were trained in ICT, were trained how to use the ICT, and were trained how to create content. And later on, because of the internet connectivity, what was done, we had both face-to-face sessions, and later on, during the face-to-face sessions, teachers downloaded all the needed material to be used in their schools. But then what can do with the competencies? First, if we want to develop competencies, we say we have to perform a desired activity, we have to provide quality service, we have to demonstrate value and attitude. And that competence can be seen also in terms as capable of doing, creating new knowledge, or when one is solving a complex problem. Now, this, when we come to ICT, we see both the attitude, the skills, the knowledge, above all, they embed the values. But one, there must be motivation. In whatever, even if you provide whatever the investment you have in ICT, if one is not motivated, will not use it. For example, now already Tanzania Institute of Education is trying to create content for teachers to use online. But before we go on, we have to teach them how to use the online concept. And also there must be availability of infrastructure, especially the hardware and the software, and might be also others. But also we need strong leadership, because if the leadership does not need change, it might be very difficult. We have the leaders who believe in change management and who believe in equity. At the same time, we have to consider the cost. These are some of the issues. Of course, we say we want, when we are talking about competence, we say, what are they? These competence, what do they do? And how do we see them? That now this one is competent. At the same time, if we want to use the ICT, we see that competence is there because surrounds on these issues related to these issues that we are talking. For example, in the lesson that we had, where can we use integration of ICT? We say, for example, in the introduction, you can use video. Of course, Christine Akelo has told us much. You can use distributed text. You can use the internet for students to search. You can read the plenary session, even online. You can make discussion in the area of creativity, and using the PowerPoint, you can create, students can use it to present their findings. And also teachers can facilitate sometimes when the students are on face-to-face or outside, and use different online tools in order to gauge which of the plan is good and how to improve it. And also to evaluate how a student feeling, the way they feel, the way they reflect on the presentation that has made on different plans that have been created. At the same time, we have to look at the factors that might influence. Of course, we have talked many, but all those factors in general, we can put them in this area. Technological skills, if it is teachers, do they have the technological skills? If not, how are we going to develop those? Pedagogical content, do teachers have this pedagogical content? Do teachers are motivated? How about infrastructure? Is the infrastructure available, responsive to what is needed? And there comes essential dimension. Where do we see the ICT integration of ICT might be have influence? We say to the learner, to the learning environment, to the professional competence, to the system capacity, community connections, accountability, actually all these areas in the technology capacity. We are trying to see in these dimensions, we can see ICT trying to do its work much more. More so, how can we measure effectiveness? Now, okay, we are doing. First, there must be a vision. Do we have a vision? There must be some practice. For example, we say we want also people, equity, people with disabilities, especially the blind and the deaf, participating in the ICT. What practice shows that these people are included? Of course, I'm talking much about people with disabilities because I'm in that area for quite a long, and I think we started some classes for blind and for the deaf, where the blind is, the teacher is also blind, and the deaf class, the teachers are also deaf. Accessibility, the proficiency, equity, and how does the system allows this to happen? For the case of Rwanda, all of these are vital. That's why they have decided to say 1 laptop per teacher. Why teachers? Teachers are the ones who really facilitate teaching and learning. Of course, I'm going a bit faster because I will share this with you, and you have some time to discuss this. And when we are talking about quality of ICT integration, to me, I have taken this 4. First, accessibility. Is it accessible? To who and how? There must be willingness to take risks. For example, okay, we want to teach the blind. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Let us try. There must be inclusive support from the senior management, because if senior management are not there, they cannot support that initiative. It's difficult. And there must be a collaborative working environment that, okay, we are all working in this space. In that way, we are sure quality of ICT will be clear. When we are talking of accessibility, of course, to me, I have taken the disability because that is even more serious in many countries. And even in Tanzania, of course, though we have some solutions, for now, the ministry since 2020 has started training teachers with disabilities in use of ICT, and now they are using it in a very positive way. Now, let me first, before I conclude, before break into the so-called into our discussions group. You are welcome for comments, at least 2. Hello. Christine Akelo, you are welcome.
Thanks, Dr. Cosmas. I just want to echo what you're saying, that teacher attitude is key in this. Because when we are talking ICTs in classroom, we hope that the teachers we are talking to are teachers who embrace technology. As it is to date, there are some teachers who are even mobile phone phobic. They have a phobia of a smartphone because how will I do this? How will I do that? So bringing in a laptop is now a bit too complicated even for them. So I agree with you. So as educationists, as educators, how do we get teachers to accept first that indeed technology can work for them? Then there's skill, and I'm happy that we are here with UNESCO. UNESCO is offering skills to teachers on ICT, different areas of ICT in education. There's a very good course for teachers called the Teacher Educator, which is going on for free. And it's taking a teacher through all these steps that I was talking about. There's the old one of the competency framework for teaching, which again is also available, but are teachers aware because I'm sure there are teachers who are interested in doing this, and but they are handicapped. They do not have the knowledge. So we need to reach out to teachers to tell them the beauty of using technology in the classroom, so that indeed, even as we are saying that, is it accessible? Yes, it could be accessible, but do they have the skill? Do they have the skill? So the other thing I would, and I also talked about having the skill to teach technology is different from having the skill to integrate technology. So integration of technology is about that infusion. The TPAC that Dr. Cosmas is talking about, how do they infuse technology, pedagogical, content knowledge into by use of technology? How do they do that? Again, it comes back to us. So I think the ball is in our court to make teachers appreciate using technology in the classroom. Thank you, Dr. Cosmas.
Thank you so much, Carol, for your insight. And this is where we really wanted to make a contribution. And always when it comes, the new things comes in. We remember I attended one meeting in Germany in 2009, where the discussion was integrating ICT in higher learning institutions in Africa. The question was, professors were asking, now what happens? That means if all our I think as that we must implant, that we have to make our clear to teachers on how and that is the area actually which is important to work on. And now we will be in groups, and I'm going to share some reflective questions so that we can continue both in chat box, because our time is limited. Maybe we can take short time, and we can take each group, maybe we can take around 10 to 15 minutes, and we can write in chat box, and then we will come back for small feedback before we end up sessions. Now, here are some of those questions. I'm going to put them in the chat box for sharing. Now, how do we continue? Maybe I can resend some more comments from others. Christine has already talked. Maybe Kokosi, I have not heard from you. Let me hear from you today, Kokosi. You are welcome. Kokosi. Hello? Yeah. Kokos, we are not hearing from, maybe you are muted. Can you unmute?
You are muted, Dr.
Okay. Ned, we don't hear you. Are you muted? Okay. Now, let me provide more instruction on the assignment is already in the chat box, but also the assignment is that the secretariat will group us in 4 groups, and group 1 will work on what efforts have been made by education systems in integrating ICT in CBC. Are there any efforts? If any, group number 2 will discuss on what opportunities for integrating ICT in CBC are at disposal, given the contextual realities of our countries. Because as we discussed, many countries, they have different contexts. Maybe now, what is available that we can start using when we are trying to integrate ICT in CBC? And also group number 3 will try to look at what are the barriers, what barriers have been observed or experienced to hinder effective integration of ICT in CBC. And group number 4 will try to tell us what needs to be done to make ICT integration in CBC a reality. Now, the Secretariat can help to group us in 4 groups, and in the groups, I expect you to do it in 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for plenary session. Please, Secretariat, help us to group in those 4 groups. Thank you. Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes, doctor, we are back.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
for
we can
coming
hear you.
back.
Yeah,
Yes,
we are hearing you clearly.
yes.
Oh,
And now
thank you.
maybe
Thank you.
for the interest of time,
Mhm.
and maybe let us hear at least a point. I give 1 minute for each group to present at least a little bit, and please, more sharing will continue from now. I will be posting these questions in our WhatsApp groups. What important I have noted is that almost every country is doing something. I was looking from Sierra Leone, they say 1 laptop per school. In Kenya, laptop. For Tanzania, thank you for Teres, you have explained a lot of materials now are free online. And now welcome group 1 to tell us what happened.
Doc, you've almost summarized what we talked about, but as we have said, Tanzania, Kenya, Lesotho, Sierra Leone, who managed to share, they've had ICT awareness. And for Tanzania, interestingly, it began way back in 2009. And we have seen them progress and coming to the Tanzania Institution of Education who have produced materials and have made them free. And it's interesting to note that the teachers were trained in ICT, and even in Kenya, we've seen infrastructure. We can get a lift from our friends that as you are thinking of doing integration of ICT, you must have the infrastructure, you must have at least a number of items that are required, small or big. Then we've seen that there are actually challenges as well, but that has not stopped any of us from trying to do something. So the challenges have been with the electricity and also motivation of our teachers. I think basically we'll just end here because there are so many things that we shared in our group. But we've seen that funding is a challenge and we need to find a way of dealing with this. And then Lesotho also said that during the COVID era, they saw a lot of use of ICTs.
Thank you so much. And I find now you have summarized almost all what opportunities are available, the barriers, and what needs to be done actually to ensure resource. With these remarks from group 1, and I hope for those who are managing these groups, please you can share what you found in your groups in the WhatsApp so that others can share. Back to Marian for further secretary work. Thank you so much for sharing. Marian. Hello, Marian.
Thank you, Dr. Cosmos. I think Marian was unable to hear. But before we conclude the session, as usual, we have a post survey which I'll post on the chat box so that the participants can provide the response to the post survey.
Now, while we continue with please continue with the post survey and you can continue with it. Otherwise, in our side, we thank you. Maybe if anything you have, Fika, if you have nothing, because for time is now we have 2 minutes. Now, maybe Fika, you can tell us just 1 minute, what have you found today?
Thank you very much, all participants in this session. You have very constructive comments, ideas, and the most important things when we presented our lesson plan in chat box, I read about how we can do assessment, formative assessment, and how we can develop these competences. In our next session, after our short break, the next session will go further to discuss this lesson plan and how to work on formative assessment at each stage, from the introduction stage up to the realization stage. So over to you, Secretariat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fika, for highlighting what is next. We are very much grateful to the participants' active participation and their contribution of their country's experiences and best practices and innovation related to their country's national education system, which has enabled us to learn from each other in a very great way. We are very much grateful to that. As Fika suggested, we will break till 13th of June, and we will come back again in the meet on July 7, 2022. We hope we will keep in touch through the WhatsApp platform we have developed for this purpose, and keep on communicating, sharing the experiences of our respective countries' experiences. Thanks so much again. I think by now we have concluded the session. Otherwise, my team, Gabriel or Marianne, has something to say. Please kindly fill in the survey form, which we have put on the chat box.